Hello guys, so in this video I'll be talking about the role of content moderation which helps build trust online. So without wasting any time, let's get right into it. So as you know, a lot of content is posted like every single day, probably every minute, every day. A lot of content is posted online, so it's a bit of an issue because some people might post offensive content online, so you need to actually moderate that content to make sure that that offensive content is filtered out so that people actually feel safe online and they actually don't see that offensive content, right? So it's a bit of a challenge maintaining safe online spaces, right? So a lot of content is posted every single day, every minute. So moderators can miss some of the content because there are a lot of content. So some of content ends up not being moderated, which ends up in the hands of users, and they can actually see that offensive content, which creates an unsafe environment, right? So it's very hard for human content moderators to go through all these large amounts of content and make sure that they follow the guidelines, like the community guidelines, to make sure that the content is not actually offensive or there's no harassment speech used or the imagery is not actually offensive, right? So some of the content can be left out unchecked or actually not moderated, which will end up in the hands of the users and the users will actually see their content, right? So it's a bit of a challenge actually going through all this content and making sure that it's moderated. So some of the risks of inadequate content moderation is actually the brand reputation being damaged, right? So if some of the content is not actually moderated correctly and users are actually posting offensive content and it's not actually moderated the right way, this will kill your brand reputation, right? And also users will not feel safe posting content on your platform, which will create an unsafe environment and users will leave your platform, right? And also if children are using your platform, some of that offensive content can end up in the hands of the children and they can see that offensive content, which is a bad thing, right? So there are some risks of not moderating some of the content on your platform. So there are different types of content moderation. There's manual content moderation, which is basically when humans actually moderate the content, right? So you basically have someone who's going through all the posts and making sure that the content is not offensive and it also follows the community guidelines, so and also meets the company or the platform's needs. They'll basically have a human who's going through all this content, which is large amounts of content, and they actually make sure that the content is not offensive. So this type of content moderation is actually costly because it requires a lot of amount of time spent on actually moderating the content. So going through all these large amounts of posts or content and moderating their content. So it's very costly, and also it can lead to some of the content not being moderated because it's a lot of content. So some of the content might be moderated not efficiently or effectively. So this will lead to some of the content actually having offensive speech or having imagery which is offensive or some harassment speech on that content, right? So another type of content moderation is automated content moderation, which involves AI. So this is using some of the AI tools which are available. So you use these tools to basically go through all these millions of content and making sure that this content is not offensive, it follows the community guidelines, and also making sure that this content doesn't contain harassment speech. Some of the images and the videos doesn't contain any offensive gestures. So you go through all this type of content to make sure that none of them is offensive. So you can use AI tools, which is much better than actually having a human going through all the content because there are a large amount of content. Having an AI tool, it can go through all these millions of content and actually make sure that it's not offensive, it follows the community guidelines, right? This also helps because, as I mentioned, having a human is much costly. So having an AI tool which is used can be less costly and it saves you a lot of time because having a human can actually require a lot of time where they go through all this content, right? And speaking of AI, so AI and machine learning can be used to actually moderate the content, as I mentioned. So there are AI tools that are actually used to moderate some of the content on some of major platforms. So basically AI and machine learning involves actually having a large amount of data set. So this data set involves having a lot of images, videos, and actually some text. So based on that, it will actually learn and actually make sure that it can detect some of the hateful speech, harassment speech, bullying behaviors that are available in that text or that video or that image, right? And also it can detect some of the gestures that are used in the videos or the image, right? And the text that are available in the image, right? So it'll be able to detect those type of behaviors. So they basically have an algorithm that is used to basically learn from a large amount of data set, and it'll actually detect some of the behaviors which are not following the community guidelines. So we feed the data set, then it basically makes a prediction on whether what is provided, which can be a text, is following the community guidelines or not. And one of the AI tools which can be used is the Fstack. So this is Fstack. So we use Fstack to actually upload your images or any file. So they actually have a lot of features. So in our case, we're dealing with content moderation. So you can actually upload an image or a video, and it can actually detect if that video or that image has unsafe content on it or it has any offensive content on it, right? So if I was using Fstack to actually upload any type of file, and we can use the features that it has to convert, transform, and actually optimize those files, right? So this is a powerful AI tool. So we can actually, if you're a developer, you can actually use this to actually have an API for uploading your images, and you can use their features to actually optimize those images, right? So yeah, so then using the video SFW or video safe for work, can actually upload a video, then that video will be checked to make sure that it doesn't contain any unsafe content. So as it says over here, it makes sure that your video actually doesn't go against the community guidelines, so you make sure that your video doesn't contain any unsafe content. Basically, this is how it's actually going to show like. So basically, you upload your image, then you just select video SFW, then it will basically check if your video contains or doesn't contain any unsafe content over there, right? So also you can use their API, then based on that API, you can actually upload your image on your platform, then get a response on whether that video basically contains any unsafe content or not. So as you go down below here, so as you can see over here, we have SFW, which is false, which means that the video is not safe for work. Then if it's true, then it means the video is safe for work, which means that video is okay, right? So you can use the API to do all these things. So it's very powerful tool. It's a very powerful AI tool. Also, they have the image SFW as well over here. It's almost the same way, so you can use the API to actually detect if your images have unsafe content. So basically, you upload an image on your platform using the API, then it will check if the image has any unsafe content. If it's true, then it means the image is safe for work. Then if it's false, it means it's not safe for work, which means it contains unsafe content, right? So they have examples here which we can use to actually integrate the API on your platform, right? So also you can use user interface over here to test. So you can upload an image and choose the SFW under intelligence, which will be used to actually detect if your image contains any unsafe content over there, right? So now we're gonna talk about balancing safety and user freedom. So it can be a lot difficult to actually balance between safety and user freedom, because users want to feel safe online, and also they want to have freedom of speech online, so they want to post whatever they want. So it's a bit difficult to actually balance between the two. So to actually help balance the safety and user freedom is to actually have a much precise and robust guidelines, so that the users can actually know what is accepted and what is not accepted on the platform, so they know what to post and what not to post. And also make sure that there's consistency in your guidelines, in your community guidelines, so that some of the guidelines are not conflicting with each other, which can create some confusion, which can be unclear on the user's part. Based on that guidelines, they won't know actually what is accepted and what is not accepted. You can also involve the users in creating your community guidelines, so that the users feel accountability and ownership of the posts that they post on your platform, right? So it'll be much clearer, and you actually create guidelines which are much precise, because you know what users actually need. So you'll create guidelines which will be fair to the user. So one of the platforms which are doing a great job in actually doing content moderation is YouTube. So they've been doing a great job over the years in actually moderating some of the content that is posted on their platform. So they've been around for many years, so they've actually been improving on actually moderating the content that is posted. So they make sure that video that you post is following community guidelines, and if it's not actually following the community guidelines, they'll reject your video. But if it's following the community guidelines, they'll allow your video to be posted, right? So YouTube is using both human and AI based content moderation in how they're actually doing their content moderation. So the future of content moderation is going to be following the AI based content moderation, because like AI can actually process a lot of content. So it can actually process a large amounts of content, and based on that content you can actually detect if this content is offensive, is following community guidelines. So it's very less costly. So the future is going to follow the AI based tools, because they are much effective in actually going through this large amounts of content, because a lot of people are posting every single day. So we need to make sure that we go through all this content and make sure that they are moderated and they follow the community guidelines, and none of this content is offensive, because we want to create a safe environment for users to actually post their content. So a lot of platforms are going to be using AI based tools because they are more reliable in actually going through this large amounts of content which are being created every single day. Alright, that's gonna do it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't done this yet, make sure you like the video and also subscribe to the channel to get more content from me. Alright, that's gonna do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day. Bye.